here is reliable left puncher Matt Duss, the former advisor to Bernie Sanders, the guy who early on in the Ukraine proxy war, after Russia invaded, he wrote an article declaring that nobody should engage with the gray zone. For some reason, engaging with the gray zone bears on the outcome of the Ukraine war and on policy there. He really went out of his way to declare us non grata.
I think it did.
Yeah. So here he is stepping in to scold Norman Finkelstein for Finkelstein said that the Jewish billionaire class has declared war on our nation's universities. Either you support Israel's genocidal war or we will destroy you. So Matt Duss, the former Bernie advisor, now he's a Beltway think tanker, steps in and says, we can and must have a conversation about the very real dangers to academic freedom without anti-Semitic Jewish billionaire class nonsense, which both endangers Jews and undermines the struggle for Palestinian liberation. So criticizing wealthy Jewish donors who are pressuring these schools to censor somehow endangers Jews and also undermines the struggle for Palestinian liberation. And it's so funny. I mean, there's so many ironies of him saying this, but he's scolding a son of Holocaust survivors. So it's just funny that he's lecturing about endangering Jews. And then also the struggle for Palestinian liberation. I don't know how long Matt Duss has been involved in the struggle for Palestinian liberation. Imagining it's not as long as Norman Finkelstein's, like 4 decades. And Duss, if I remember correctly,
has he struggled?
Yeah, well, of course not. But
like struggling is like, oh, I'm doing something. Like Matt Duss, I don't associate him with struggle.
Yeah, no, like he's on Zoom. He's on Zoom all day, taking part in meetings, and he's writing. I remember, when your book Goliath came out, not that long ago. Like, what year did that come out? 2013, 2012.
Yeah.
He wrote a review trashing you. So that was his contribution to the struggle, at least back then, is trashing critics of Israel and people who support Palestinian liberation. And here
he defended Netanyahu against me. He defended Netanyahu's dignity, and he said, like, I'm the one extreme, and on the other extreme are the neocons. But
yes, yeah.
And right in the middle is his boss Bernie, who continues to oppose a ceasefire. And my response to Matt is, I mean, aside from the fact that you're a Gentile who wants to like suck up to people that Norman could care less about, when are you going to call for a ceasefire? I mean, who are you to lecture anyone when you're still, isn't he against a ceasefire?
He is, because Bernie is. And I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised, at least, if he's still involved in crafting Bernie's policy. But I mean, Bernie's incoherent. He claims he supported the UN resolution that the U.S. vetoed, which called for a ceasefire. Okay. But then he comes out and says he opposes a permanent ceasefire because you can't have a ceasefire with Hamas. So he's basically saying that Israel's regime change goals in Gaza are legitimate. So therefore, he claims to both support a ceasefire now, but also endorse Israel's goals, which is to destroy Hamas, which Israel's doing by destroying the Gaza Strip. So I don't know exactly what he favors, but it's incoherent. And that's why AIPAC sent out a tweet thanking Bernie for his opposition to a permanent ceasefire. So AIPAC certainly thinks that they have an ally in Bernie Sanders.
I mean, this is the moral test, and they've failed. It doesn't matter what you say. If you're in Congress, it matters what you do. Thomas Massie is doing things that actually count as a Republican libertarian who might have a totally different philosophy than most people out there protesting for Palestine, who might not even know he exists. He might not even be coming at it from the same, his motives might be totally different, but he's doing something. What is Bernie doing? It's all hot air. And then what he actually does at the end of the day is further the genocide.
And that's why AIPAC is saying, thank you, Senator Sanders, for your strong opposition to a permanent ceasefire with Hamas. And I mean, think about the logic of Bernie's.
He was for a pause.
He was for a pause. And so
for a pause. And then after the pause, we're going to kill more babies. It has to happen because the Hamas is a threat. We need a pause to let those babies have a few more days on this earth. And then I'm going to put on my mittens and watch Netanyahu kill babies.
Bernie's argument is so incoherent and stupid. He's saying that you can't have a ceasefire with Hamas because Hamas has called for the annihilation of Israel and has vowed to continue carrying out October 7th. And the basis for that is one statement by one Hamas leader, which said that, Israel should be annihilated and will continue to carry out October 7th. But what this Hamas leader was saying was basically, we're going to continue resisting because we're occupied. And Bernie, because he can't recognize the fundamental problem here is occupation, There's no obligation on Israel. It's only about how Israel conducts objectives that he presumes to be legitimate. So because he won't accept the fact the problem is the occupation and that's what has to end first, that's the first thing that has to happen, then it's all about what tactics should be pursued along the goal of destroying Hamas, rather than how can we end the occupation now. And the logic of saying like you can't have a ceasefire with Hamas because because one leader endorsed destroying Israel. Look at the statements that Israel leaders constantly make about destroying Gaza and Palestinians, wipe them off the map. And not only their statements, but their actions every single day of massacring people. So you can't have a peace with Hamas because of one person's statements and the actions on one day, October 7th, but you can have peace with Israel, which has killed far more people and was attacked to begin with on October 7th because they're the occupying power. If they weren't occupying, they wouldn't have been attacked. But he can't process that logic in his head. So therefore, he comes up with these incoherent statements and gets applause from AIPAC.
Yeah, I mean, not to belabor the point too much, but Hamas states, they officially state that they seek a extended hudna with Israel. A hudna is like a truce that lasts for a long period, but is not permanent, because what their alternative is the Oslo Accords and the peace process, where you keep negotiating while laying down your arms and coordinating security with your oppressor, and essentially allowing yourself to turn into what the West Bank is today, where Palestinians are defenseless. Gaza, prior to October 7th, had no Israeli soldiers. You could travel up and down this tiny little strip of land and there were no settlers, and people are fighting back. They're fighting back today. And that's sort of what every resistance movement fighting colonialism has done traditionally. So they're willing to negotiate a 20-year hudna on the basis of negotiating more towards an end of occupation. But what Bernie wants, which is the same thing that Biden wants, and he's taking instructions and directions from the White House, is for Palestinians to lay down and accept occupation forever because they believe in Zionism. I mean, that's really what this comes down to. We're kind of in a situation now where you have to decide, are you for occupation or not? There's no middle ground here. And I don't think there's going to be a ceasefire until we see some kind of decisive indication of where history will go for Israel and Palestine. Bernie's on the wrong side of history. Matt Duss is lecturing people. There are all these annoying little screeds coming out now about what the left should say, whatever the left is. Like, I don't know. It's like some gatekeepers for the radical wing of the Democratic Party. But there was like this, what was her name? Megan Day from Jacobin started scolding people about questioning the official narrative of October 7th and questioning Israel's rape propaganda. And I said to her, I'm not going to, a lot of people were going in on her and saying, oh, you're a phony, whatever. I just have one thing to say to you. Why couldn't you convince Bernie to be for a ceasefire? You're lecturing people. Your book is called, Beyond Bernie. Your whole life was about Bernie. You're the Jacobin editor. Jacobin hitched its star to Bernie. And what did Bernie give them back? What did they get from this relationship? I mean, power concedes nothing without a demand, and they haven't even demanded that he do it. So yeah, whatever.
I mean, there are activists who've been pressuring Bernie. I mean, Code Pink has been at his office pressuring him, but yeah, he should face even more criticism and pushback because he's supposed to represent the progressive movement. And the progressive standard bearer can't even bring himself to call for a ceasefire. It's such a joke. It's such a joke. I mean, he did vote against, I want to be fair to him. He did vote against that measure to give Israel another, $15 billion. Although at the same time, he urged his colleagues to support the $60 billion for the Ukraine proxy war. But he did vote against he did vote against it on the grounds that he opposed the Israel funding. So credit to him for that. That's something. But of course, a progressive who calls himself progressive should at minimum be calling for a ceasefire, and he can't even bring himself to do that.
Yeah, it just seems like there's no space within, it's established politics for anything like we're seeing on Ukraine, where the Republicans are, the House Freedom Caucus is pushing back. There's nothing like that with Israel Palestine. And in previous streams, I'd said, vote for a melon, do something to register your disgust with the bipartisan Biden-led consensus on genocide. And people are furious, but Jill Stein has jumped into the race. She's shown up at a lot of Palestine solidarity rallies, including rallies where activists are trying to shut down arms companies shipping weapons to Israel. And, that might be a good protest vote. She's going to be on the ballot in a lot more states. She's on I think the Green Party has ballot access in 36 states. She will be on a lot more states than Cornel West, who sort of seems to have faded away completely. I haven't heard from him in weeks. But find a protest vote, do something to register your discontent. Don't let them say that Biden lost because of, don't let the pundits the day after Biden loses ignore your outrage. That's what I want to say. And I don't see any hope within electoral politics for actually pushing for a ceasefire after watching Biden's performance last night at his Hanukkah. What was it? Hanukkah Israel lobby perversion of Judaism festival of darkness. I think that the way this is going to shape up, what we're going to see, the preponderance of forces that will actually alter the situation in favor of Palestinians will come from the region, and they will be using force because all diplomatic channels have been cut off to Palestinians by the Biden administration.